Prateep, are you?
Hi, Suvaluck.
Hi, Prateep. I can't remember what is the numbers that I'm going to give a talk this afternoon. The sequence, sorry.
Yeah. Did go ahead?
I think, yeah, hi, Suvaluck. I think you'll go number 4.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. I think we have all the presenters, Derek. We just, we have 3 attendees at this point in time.
Okay.
Maybe we'll give it a minute and then or so.
Well, sure. Let's give it 1 more minute, I think, as people go into the various, from the lobby, go into the various rooms. Yeah.
Yeah, it takes a bit of time for people to
1 minute.
But otherwise, we have everybody that needs to be here in terms of presenting.
Okay. And you said that Amrita will join us? Yeah,
I'm looking for her in the attendee list, and then I will bring her into the panel. So she can be the last one, and then Yinji will be the last one.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm so sorry.
Okay, well, why don't we begin then?
Okay.
I'm just looking at the time.
Only
I know
6 people.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're losing time otherwise. Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
Okay. Over to you, Derek. Yes.
Fantastic. Well, it's great to see everybody. I'm very much looking forward to this. Welcome to the V2V session on the approach to understanding the process of building strong small-scale fisheries. So for those that don't know me, I'm Derek Armitage. I'm a faculty member at the University of Waterloo. I'm going to co-chair this session. I'm very happy to co-chair this session with Prateep Nayak, my colleague, also from the University of Waterloo. And of course, the project director for the V2V Global Partnership on small-scale fisheries. Very pleased to be joined by a number of distinguished speakers today, and I very much look forward to hearing everyone talk about various issues in small-scale fisheries for this session. I think what we'll do is we have an order on the program that we'll generally follow. With the presentations, we have approximately 10 minutes per presentation, and then that leaves us some time for some questions as well. We'll do our very best because we have a full slate of speakers to try and keep on time, because we do have a hard ending as other sessions in the conference are going to be taking place. So it'll be about 10 minutes per presentation. Prateep or I will give you a 2-minute warning, and then because we do want to leave a few moments for some questions of each other and with the audience. And before that, though, Prateep is going to provide us with a very brief overview of the V2V partnership and just situate our various talks in that context. In the interest of time, I think that's all I'll say for now. So again, very much looking forward to the conversation. And Professor Gazi, you'll go first after Prateep, just to give you that heads up.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Prateep, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Derek, and thanks for everyone joining today. And welcome to the audience that is still joining in the attendee list. I'll just take a few minutes to introduce the V2V Global Partnership and some of the work that we are doing so that it is easier to follow the rest of the presentations which are connected to the work of the V2V Global Partnership itself. As you can see, the session that we are all gathered here for is titled as the Vulnerability to Viability Approach, Understanding the Processes of Building Strong Small-Scale Fisheries. So basically the idea here is to look at how small-scale fisheries can have the ability, the capacity, the power, and the strength to be able to not only respond to the vulnerabilities that they have been historically and currently facing, but at the same time, make positive steps towards achieving viability. So we call this as a transition from the vulnerability to viability. And in order to do so, the vulnerability to viability global partnership focuses on a few things. The first one is the kind of knowledge that is required to achieve this vulnerability to viability transition. We believe in the co-production, co-creation of knowledge that can become an instrument, a means to achieve the transition in small-scale fisheries communities around the world. The second one is to take the knowledge that is co-produced and create a sort of a shared repository or a database where each one of the stakeholders or each one of the collaborators, starting from the community to the government to researchers and other stakeholders, are able to use it in a way that it helps in the transition from vulnerability to viability. The third aspect is to build multi-level capacity that can be crucial in achieving the transition. The fourth one is to synthesize and integrate the knowledge so that we can create novel governance arrangements and policy and interventions so that this transition is then facilitated. And the fifth area of focus of our work is on knowledge mobilization and knowledge dissemination, especially in the context of the transition. The global partnership today is something that constitutes many scientists, 121 scientists, practitioners, policy and community actors across the globe, focusing especially in 12 countries, 6 in Africa and 6 in Asia. That also includes 38 universities as partners, 22 government and research institutions, 25 NGOs and community organizations. Currently 65 graduate students are part of this project where they are looking at various aspects of small-scale fisheries transition from vulnerability to viability through their graduate research. And we are currently based in 26 countries, 6 continents, and it is growing. If you look at the V2B Global Partnership, the top right map shows where we are present or our members are present at this point in time, but also the bottom map shows the 12 countries where we are doing in-depth, detailed case studies to understand the processes of vulnerability to viability transition. There are many products that are coming out. There are many knowledge platforms that are being used in this particular partnership. If you are interested, then you can look at our website, www.b2bglobalpartnership.org. You can email us at b2bglobalpartnership@gmail.com, follow us on Twitter at b2bpartnership, and you can join one or more of these events and platforms which regularly happen and will be happening in the next several years. Thank you very much. I'll pass it on back on to Derek so that we can listen to some of the interesting presentations from our country team coordinators. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Prateep. That's a helpful context and overview. And yes, I mean, you mentioned a very large team that we have, and so we're very fortunate to have a number of members of the V2V partnership speaking today. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Professor Gazi to take us away with the first presentation.
Thank you very much, Derek, for giving me the opportunity to present today. I'd like to share this slide. Let me.
And Gazi, I'll just put my hand up when we're getting to the 8 or 10 minute mark as well, just so you know.
Okay. I think I will manage the time, see how it goes. Okay, so thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk in this afternoon and in the World Small Scale Fisheries Congress. And especially thanks for the organizer and B2B coordinators for giving this opportunity. My name is Gazi Mohammad Nurul Islam, and I am going to present the topic, understanding the social ecological dimensions of vulnerability in the small scale fisheries in MPA in Malaysia. does livelihoods strategy reduce or redistribute the vulnerabilities? So this paper has been prepared by myself and Chitra Devi. Chitra Devi is also a partner for V2V project in Malaysia. She is working in the World Wide Fund for NASA WWF Malaysia. So the outline of the presentation today, I will talk about very briefly about the MPA management and background of MPA in Malaysia. Then I will talk about some theoretical and empirical understanding of the vulnerability. And then finally, I will give some conclusions from the presentation. Okay, so the background of MPA in Malaysia is that MPA has been established in the 20 years ago. In the last 20 years, they have been implemented the MPA in Malaysia in 42 islands in Malaysia. So, and the objective and the goal of this MPA establishment is that to protect the coral reef habitat, to conserve the resources, and protect the inshore fisheries from the trawls to secure livelihood of small scale fishers in Malaysia. And the MPA is a no-take MPA, so it's banned all the activities that is creating problem for the resources in the MPA area. And after the MPA establishment, they have a massive large-scale development project established and promoted the tourism activities in the MPAs in Malaysia. And based on the different studies, we have found that MPA failed to achieve the conservation goal and the socio-economic goal to improve the well-being of small-scale fishers in Malaysia. And however, the limited studies are available to understand the impact of fisheries conservation and socio-economic and ecological aspect of the small-scale fisheries in Malaysia. And from the past studies, there is a clear sign that coral habitats have been degraded due to the anthropogenic impacts and climate change. And there are different stressors like social ecological stressors, and main stressors from the social ecological is infrastructure development, pollution, tourism development, and tourism related business, including the activities of the tourists like divers, snorkelers, and other all activities that directly damaging the environment or the coral reef habitat. And from this MPA, no-take MPA, fishers have lost their income opportunities through fishing activities totally. So, however, the employment opportunities generated in the tourism sector and improved a lot in terms of economic condition of the local people. But the problem is there is a inequitable access to the resources due to the no-take MPA, and inequitable income opportunities and employment opportunities for the fishermen, and loss of the access right to the fisheries they have been using for generation. So they have lost their access right, and weak participation in the fisheries management, and tourism business are more and more in these areas, and major benefits from the business going to the outside investors and the rich people and elite. So these are the important problems happening in the MPA areas. And the governance is also very weak because of the lack of enforcement of the rules and regulations for the MPA, poor coordination between the state and federal government, and poor participation of local fishers in the fisheries and related to fisheries activities, poor relationship and communication with the authorities because the Marine Park Department are responsible, Fisheries Department are no more responsible since the establishment of the Marine Park in Malaysia. So, and there are socio-economic, ecological, and governance factors that adversely affected the livelihood of SSF in the MPAs in Malaysia. The studies are not available to particularly understand the factors reinforcing or creating the vulnerability of the local fishers in the MP areas. None of the studies conducted to understand the vulnerability. And the objective of the study to explore the theoretical and empirical understanding of the social ecological dimensions of vulnerability and the resilience of fisher households for livelihood outcomes. Now I like to present the theoretical and empirical review on the social ecological aspect of the vulnerability. Whatever the literature clearly shows that the poverty is the root of vulnerability. So poverty is multidimensional, and we have been long experimented in this how to improve the livelihood of the poor fishermen. So the poverty is the multidimensional aspect, and also it has interpreted based on the experiences like economic experience, social experience, and also psychological experience. And poverty is understood by the lack of assets, income and non-income poverty, social poverty, and social security and quality of the life aspect. And also there are different category of the fishery poverty, like chronic poor, transient poor, and the non-poor. And we have investigated this this poverty in terms of basic need and capability approach of poverty. And in terms of vulnerability, what are the concepts available to understand about vulnerability? Vulnerability is very multidimensional, and it has a dynamic characteristics. And probability of falling vulnerability, risk, and powerlessness are that come from the being poor. So poor is the root, and then vulnerability comes from the poverty. How the poverty is impacted on the community. And the fishing is the last occupation, and poorest of the poor people are fishing. This is true in the Asian context, and fishing is the main livelihood options for their living and livelihood. And poor fisheries deprived due to social, ecological, and governance changes, and find difficulty to escape from vulnerability. Now about the literature review, different scholars have found that it is difficult to examine the vulnerability because it is in terms of exposure of vulnerability, in terms of sensitivity to threats, and in terms of capacity building to adapt the shocks. And literature review also suggests that the restricted area in the MPA may increase the risk and vulnerability in the future. And thus, enhancing social ecological resilience and adaptive capacity is very crucial for the SSF community in the MP areas. And out of the SSF, the persistently poor households have high probability of falling into the poverty, and they are acute vulnerable among the group. And social ecological vulnerability framework is widely used to understand. It defines the vulnerability as the link between social and ecological domains, which comprise by three main dimensions: exposure, sensitivity to threat, and the capacity to adapt the shocks. However, the main problem to examine the vulnerability because of dynamic characteristics and the adaptation strategies, which address the observed symptoms, which is changeable very frequently, and not the vulnerability problem to research. So this is the problem for the researchers to investigate the vulnerability. And in terms of the assessment of vulnerability, many studies have focused that climate change effects on the livelihoods of small scale fisheries in terms of biophysical determinants. Very few studies are available to investigate the socioeconomic conditions and governance determinants of vulnerability. So several recent literature also document that social heterogeneity are important factors like race, age, ability, class to determine the vulnerability to climate change and ability to adapt. And social impacts of adaptation of the drivers of vulnerability have not been investigated yet by several studies mentioned. And this particular social vulnerability for the marginalized people differ between the context and based on the interest, sources of vulnerability, and based on the adaptation capability and knowledge in the different communities. And vulnerability are differentiated by socially. So through inequitable access or inequitable socio-political relations, to generate social vulnerability to the marginalized people, and also in terms of the power relations, sharing of the power between the authority and the community. Elite capture are the main and fundamental issues of SSF in the context of Malaysian MPA. The marginalized and inequalities are reinforced existing power relations and existing vulnerability on the basis of gender, literacy, and caste. So several researchers mentioned that the gender, literacy, caste, and different social classes are main the research findings for the vulnerability. And the magnitude of vulnerability increases due to maladaptation. The adaptation approach, they have been implemented or adopted a strategy are not adapted in the long run. So this is another problem for adaptation strategy for the vulnerability. And the lack of access to capital assets, natural, human, physical, social, and financial. And adaptation strategies may create new risks. Some of the study shows that adaptation strategies may create new risks and threats through diverting resources away from the particular development program to another development program, and to target the new people in their development programs.
Gazi, just so you know, we have to wrap up in about 1 or 2 minutes just to be able to make sure everyone has a chance to speak. So yeah.
Okay. The sustainable livelihood indicators has been widely used in explaining the relationship, and also some scholars expanded the livelihood framework to understand clearly about the different dimensions of vulnerability. And social well-being is recently discussed in the literature, how the 3 dimensions like well-being, capital, and resilience can explain in the vulnerability. And this is the framework we have to I think we have prepared based on the literature review. And then we have seen that the social ecological drivers of vulnerability to mediate the influence from the governance. Governance is very important, and these institutions and the local organizations. So institutional aspect of the governance is very important for MPA management or for getting the good outcome of the livelihood. So this is the framework that show that vulnerability context can be explained by different adaptation strategies, and there is a important factor for the governance which will determine the vulnerability and the outcome of the livelihood relationship. The conclusion is that there is insufficient literature to understand social ecological drivers in terms of the adaptation strategy and vulnerability, and it is very difficult to understand the reducing vulnerability or exit from vulnerability in the current literature. And also there is a risk and unpredictable event, and the event is more frequent compared to the past. So there is a lot of challenges for vulnerability mitigation in the future. So this is the livelihood model that we have developed to understand the role of governance on the relationship between livelihood assets and dimension of the vulnerability, to understand how the local fishers can improve the resilience for sustainable well-being in the future. That's all. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks very much, Gazi. That's really interesting, and starting especially with this idea of redistributing vulnerability and then linking that to the model. Maybe if you can stop sharing your screen, and Professor Haseeb, you'll be going next and share your screen. I believe there is a question and answer sort of function or a chat function that questions can be directed to Gazi, so feel free to do that. What we're hoping is we'll have a little bit of time as well for some conversation and questions after. I suppose just because given the time, I think we better continue, and hopefully we can have some questions summarized towards the end as well. So again, thanks, Gazi. Professor Haseeb, maybe we can turn it over to you. And again, I'll give you that warning when we get to the 10-minute mark.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon from Dhaka, Bangladesh. What I would like to share with you here that last year we published a couple of peer-reviewed journal articles by conducting a couple of studies how COVID-19 pandemic as well as the fishing ban that we have in Bangladesh affected the resilience or vulnerability of small-scale marine fishers. I will share that story with you. First, definitely we have heard from Prateep as well as from Gazi that there are so many studies are being conducted to trying to understand the vulnerability, resilience, viability of SSF communities. But it is not often we get to explore the vulnerability of the same community seen through different resilience lenses. That we tried in 2020. What happened back then, of course, we all know that the whole world became standstill in the first half of 2020. But it was quite different for the lives of small-scale fishers in Bangladesh, especially the marine fishers. What happened? Bangladesh was under lockdown from
Lost.
Yep, well, it looks like we have a little bit of a technical.
Everybody in the. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you again. Yes, you just it was a brief moment there.
So what happened that although the lockdown was over for the whole country by May, but it didn't over for the fisher because it was followed by fishing ban for another 65 days. So the smaller scale fishers, they suffered from unprecedented 130 days of stresses and shocks. And we picked up 2 smaller scale fishing communities on the Bangladesh coast, and we tried to understand their resilience of this against this dual shock by utilizing 2 conceptual analytical framework. We interviewed 100 fishers, and I'm going to share with you the result and what we have found and how we did the whole thing. So the first framework talks about different types of resilience at different societal types. For example, of course, we have individual level resilience, household level resilience, as well as community against different shocks and stress, whether it is fish scarcity or implementing no fish takes areas. And the resilience features matters where you are, where you belong to. Are you part of the community? Are we looking into the community? Are we looking into the resilience of the household? Then livelihood diversification should be looked into. Or are we talking about the skills and knowledge and the family support? Then we will be looking into the individual level resilience. But it is not like that. These 3 resilience are, or level of resilience are in silos. We understand that they actually interact with each other, within themselves as well as between themselves. Taking this analytical framework, we found that, yes, there has been lots of different interactions, both positive and negative interactions among these 3 levels, but there were lots of inconsistencies. It is not like that low community level resilience means that household level resilience is also quite low. Or strong individual level resilience doesn't mean that high household level resilience. So there are lots of interactions we identified. Of course, most of the resilience features belong to the individual level and household levels, as we can see from the diagram. But the crucial part of the whole exercise is sometimes we look into a particular level, probably we miss out quite a few things that we need to look into. This particular analysis actually shows us that sometimes it is good. Sometimes it is quite useful to look into different tiers rather than focusing on one layer. Now, coming to the second framework, we took help from a standard established theoretical framework, briefly called 5C4R. It has originally been developed for measuring flood resilience of vulnerability community. There is an alliance called Zurich Flood Resilience Alliance, who have been working for the last 6-7 years, and they developed this framework. 5C, the C stands for 5 capital, as we have heard from the previous presenter. It is the 5 asset or capitals, livelihood asset or capitals that we use in sustainable livelihoods framework. On the other hand, 4 Rs, these are the properties of resilience. I will be showing you as I draw the framework. You will be seeing how we have framed it. So if we think of time at the resilience level, until May 2020, the SSF communities, they were having a certain level of resilience, whatever it is. But when the shock, like lockdown, came into play, definitely their resilience level or their vulnerability increased. But it depends upon 4 resilience characteristics, like robustness, how robust they were, the society, the community we're talking about. And the P stands for H and F and S. These are the capitals we're talking about, because robustness, according to this framework, it is related to physical capital, human capital, financial capital, and social capital. But once the first shock they tackled, they started to regain their, because they're supposed to bounce back. So while bouncing back, we need to quantify, or we need to understand how resourceful they were. And when we talk about resourcefulness, the second resilience property, we talk about human capital, social capital, as well as financial capital. That also include how many plan Bs they have, the redundancy in the system, and as well as how fast they are recovering. So these are the 4 resilience properties. As you can see, through the lockdown, if they have these 4 properties, after the lockdown, if they can demonstrate these 4 resilience properties, they can kind of regain their previous state. It might be true in a normal situation where lockdown happened, but for this particular group of people, SSF communities, things were different, because they faced another shock within 2.5 months later, which was 65 days. They knew about it, but they were not prepared about it. That's why their resilience actually was tarnished. They became more vulnerable, as you can see from the green dashed line. So their bouncing back was delayed. They had to put lots of effort to come back, taking the external help, and so on and so forth. And as they were bouncing back, there were 3 types of pathways could be considered. They might be regaining their previous state before the COVID. They might be having an improved pathway, as you can see from the dashed line, or their resilience level might be lower than the pre-COVID era, as you can see from the dotted line. That's the conceptual framework we considered, which was also the analytical framework we considered. But what we found that fishermen, they severely got affected because they were depending upon single income source. They didn't have the access to aid, financial and natural resources. Their alternative livelihood skills were quite poor. They were limited to social protection. The leadership was lacking. Institutional incompetence was there. And in all the cases, we found that whatever the resilience property is, robustness, resourcefulness, rapidity, redundancy, financial capital was very crucial. That's why we recommended that drastic investment is needed exclusively for small scale marine fishes, so that they can create asset, because we are not focusing much on creating asset for them. We are just giving them some subsistence packages. Another thing is, often we talk about alternative livelihood option, but these options are quite not related to their culture. We need to think of that as well. So is social safety net program. To conclude, these 2 examples show that we can be innovative in developing our analytical tool as we want to measure the vulnerability and viability of SSF communities. We can learn from other disciplines, what do they do, and that will advance our discipline as well. And that's the academic aspect of this particular presentation. But using the results, we can always develop our strategy, our governance strategy can be improved, our how to tackle natural calamities. Not only, we often talk about natural calamities, but the 2 examples, the 2 shocks I talk about, these are not per se the natural calamities we are talking about, climate calamities, climate-related calamities. These are beyond our expectation. So the findings can guide the emerging economies or the countries in transition like Bangladesh and give us useful directions. That's all from me. Thank you very much. Look forward to having consultation and open discussion and question and answer.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Professor Haseeb. A really interesting model and framework tracking resilience and with those different points. So that's quite fascinating. Maybe while Professor Indah, you're going to be going next. So if you wouldn't mind sharing your screen, and we have Prateep, I see you've suggested people can write a question in the chat, which we're welcome to entertain. We have maybe 1 minute for a question while Professor Indah gets her screen shared.
Okay, thank you, Derek. Is it my PowerPoint shown here?
Yep, it's showing. Yeah.
Okay, let me make it in a better view.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank
okay.
you very much.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead. So yeah. Thanks. So again, if you have any questions for Professor Haseeb, please put them in the chat. And for now, I'll turn it over to you, Professor Indah, and I will let you know when 10 minutes is up.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Derek, giving me a time. So I'm happy. It's my pleasure, and we are here with the team, but only show up only my face. The others here, we are in a big room, and my students are also here. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I would like to congratulate for Prateep Nayak, Professor Prateep Nayak from Waterloo, being a coordinator of V2V. So this is a great pleasure because we can have opportunity sharing together. Although this is an in virtual, but really very useful, because I felt that this opportunity with V2V is really wonderful and marvelous for team of Indonesia, especially for my student as well as myself. So here we really appreciate for today for this Congress, World Small Scale Fisheries Congress in Japan. So we travel to Japan, although using a virtual, but hope next time we are in offline. So thank you so much once again for V2V Global Partnership for the support, and also our Diponegoro University employer. So we would like to present my, here is actually initial research, which is one fit with the V2V, but since this is still initial, so we have to do preliminary research. And this one is a part of one of student project dissertation for V2V. So our location is in Karimun, Java. Karimun, Java, if we see from here Indonesia map, so we are in Java, the most densely populated island in Indonesia. And we are in the Central Java province, in a capital city of Semarang. However, the location of this study area is in Jepara. So in eastern, northeastern of Semarang, and I think will be similar to Gazi in Malaysia, because in Karimun, Java, we also have MPA, Marine Protected Area. So the marine protected area here with the nucleus of MPA, which is surrounding with the several islands, and Karimun Java is considered as the famous destination for marine recreational and also park for marine protected area. That's two things are together in a dilemma. One is a protected area, but the surrounding one is for the tourism area, and the other part in between is for fisheries livelihood area. So the three zone, I believe that rather difficult to manage because it's fenceless, no boundary, because the marine protected area in Karimun Java, we can see there is considered as a beautiful one in Indonesia, after from Bunaken as well, and also the other side is in Papua. So this is the most reachable destination for recreational of fisheries in Java, especially for Central Java. The Karimun Java itself is one of marine protected area. This is already regulated in a law number 31 in 2004. And this is support with for fulfillment of ecological as well as social and economic needs. As I mentioned in earlier, of course, the dilemma is between marine protected area and then for tourism, as well as the area for livelihood of small-scale fisher. The management of Karimun Java, which is the national park there, with the conservation, and they are divided into 9 zones in Karimun Java. And I think it's most beautiful one. And we just, for the better view of understanding, we try to visualize that the tourism in Karimun, whether my cursor moving is seen in a capture. Yes, this is the tourism activities. And of course, the impact of tourism is not only in the money, but as well as for the waste disposal, especially for the plastic, as well as the degradation of environment, because tourists may not fully well informed and also may not fully understand regarding with the environment. And also the fleet for surveillance in tourism also is not sufficient enough. Therefore, although it's already put in a banner as well as information, however, we cannot avoid that the coral will be destroyed, and this is worsened during the peak season. So of course, the decreasing in resource capacity happen especially during the peak season of tourism. So we have in a good moon for the tourists is during May, June, July, because the stream and also the overwhelm is less. However, during the rainy season, of course, it's a big wave. Therefore, the tourists is not so many as like during a summer season. And the conflict of interest, of course, there happen. Hotel as well as for the resorts, and also cafe, restaurant are sprouting like many things happen during the coastline, especially for the shore, which is in a flat one. And this happen while the local government as well as the NGO and also especially for the academician like the Diponegoro University, we have stationed in there. However, due to lack of manpower as well as a surveillance fleet, then we cannot manage versus with the tourists, many person are come there. This is why the challenge is whether this happen with the vulnerability toward the livelihood of a small scale fisher. This will be a problem, and the conflict are counter at this moment. Sorry. And then, of course, we use this keyword, V2V, small scale empowerment, stakeholders, and Karimun Java, Indonesia. This is just only for easy to find this topic. The objective of the study, of course, this is regarding with the V2V project. So this is a part of our project, as I mentioned in the last presentation in inception report, if I'm not mistaken, last 2 months, that we have two location of study. One is in Karimun Java, which is now I'm presenting today, and the other one is in Batang. So in the western part of Semarang, which is there also fish sanctuary with name of Karangjeru, which is several students of us already got the research for the Karangjeru as well. And now we concentrate for Karimun Java because the Karimun Java is already starting with the CIMAR research at that time, produced for master thesis, and now continue with the V2V. So the main objective of the study, among others, are to analyze the vulnerability of fishers in maintaining their livelihood. Excuse me. And then the second one is to formulate a strategy to improve fisher livelihood, as well as try to outline the design of sustainable resource management in Karimun Java Island. And this is the material and method for our preliminary research. So we already done the several interview with 140 fishermen there in Karimun Java, and also we did FGD with the stakeholders. We call ABCG. A is academician, B is business, G is government, and C is community. So ABCG at this moment. So I hope this will be enlarged to be the tripartite or whatever the name. We call also pentahelic, as well as the this is a co-management concept. The data collection, of course, the primary data from in-depth interview, and also FGD, and also with the 140 fishermen we interview. Fortunately, we tried to interview this project during the COVID. We tried to do our best because the COVID during COVID since 2019 until 2022 in earlier January. So the government of Indonesia is really protect for the contact, but we try to interview with the phone and the other media, and also with the people there. So with the hand of our colleague as well as student and the other we try to interview with the fishermen there. And then,
sorry, just to let you know, we have about 2 minutes left. If
all right, so we use a mixed method. So combination of with the statistic descriptive as qualitative, and also the triangulation, we use Atlas TI. In short, I can say that the vulnerability of fisher in maintaining livelihood, we can shown in this figure. The social vulnerability, this is because mostly about 8.7. We scale with a conventional scale 1 to 10, but the most highest one is here is a shock because of a pandemic. And then for the economic vulnerability here, we can see that difficulty to distribute the catch of fish will be the bigger one, 8.2. And then the, well, natural vulnerability, we count here, there is a declining in a biomass 7.7 perceived by respondent. So this is the strategy to improve the fisher livelihood. Once again, this is still preliminary because we need to do in-depth, and also we have to collaborate with the IADAP as a V2V proposed for this is the better approach. So from the attribute of physical, financial, social, human, and natural, so we already identified the the important item. So education level, this cause vulnerability of a fisher livelihood, and also decreasing in a resource, as well as because of the conflict of in a tourism sector. And with the co-management, government, community, business, and academician, so we try to identify the factor of fishing activities as well as tourism activities, which is cause the problem of resource management. This is our conclusion, but once again, this is a preliminary study, so we not conclude this is the final one, but this is just a better view for further research. Thank you so much for this time, and please come to Indonesia. We can do snorkeling and diving to Karimun, Java. Thank you so much, Derek.
Okay. Thank you very much, Terima kasih. There's really interesting strategies as well at the end, and I think that's a common theme that's coming across in these presentations. So lots of really interesting ideas to explore in more depth. Really appreciate it. Again, I think just in the interest of time, we better keep moving. So Professor Suvaluck, it's, if you want to share your screen.
We still have 3 presentations to go. If everyone can keep to 10 minutes, please, that would be very helpful.
So you see my screen right now?
Yep, we can see it. Yep, you're free to go.
Thank you. This time is better. So my talk today is about the regulatory injustice, the consequences of a non-regular process in fishery lawmaking in Thailand as part of the TBTI Global and as part of the research under the V2V partnership. We have, okay, before I going into the story, what I have found, I would like to give you some information about the small-scale fisheries, which based on the marine capture sectors that has been established long coexist with the large-scale industrialized fisheries, and it's officially defined as the fishing that using vessel less than 10 ton grosses and operate in the coastal waters between 3 to 5 nautical miles from the baseline. And it's about 80% of the 57 and 800 fishing households who are involved in the small-scale fisheries in Thai nations. and their cat composition are about 50% are fish, 19% shrimp, 9% squid, 5 jellyfish, and 3% jellyfish. And they use usually gears about gill net, trolling net, trap, and drip net. And if you remember this, we talked about this once in a May conference in a V2V session. Over that time, we already identified that the Thai small-scale fisheries are in a moderate case. So it means that they have the basic infrastructures and facilities, healthcare that they need to operate in a well-functioning system. And why being the moderate case? It is a good thing, but they are still precarious, facing the steepest part of the V2V pathway. In fact, they face the highest challenges in staying where they are, not sliding down to the vulnerability side of the scale, and taking serious effort to get them over the stable state of viabilities. So to get the small-scale fishing over the stable state of viabilities, there are some challenges, including fishery decline, legislative change, political dynamic, bold economy, and climate change. And the legislative change are what I'm going to explore more. So when we talk about the small scale face injustice, oh, that's too fast. Okay, this one it's strange. Anyway, and the injustice they face is according to the law enforcement. And basically, there are several types of injustice that I'm not talking about all of them, but I'm talking about only the regulatory injustice as the slide said. So what we have done is the V2V project in 2021, the finding from the V2V situation analysis that we conducted over 10 coastal provinces in southern Thailand and making few observations. And recently in this year, we conduct an informal meeting somewhere in the south again with the small scale fishers, large scale fishers, and also some kind of fishery officials. So I will focus on the historical context of the Thai fishery law since 1947. And then they have a second amendment again, 1953s, urgent amendment, 1970s, and the third amendment, 1985. And the one that I will pay my attention is in 2015, which is the Fishery Acts. In that kind of Fishery Acts, there is some good point about the encourage participation of small-scale fisheries, clear institution of the national fishery committees, provincial fishery committees, and also define the inshore fishing zone for the small-scale fisheries. But anyway, that one does not contain the definition of small-scale fisheries. In April on the same year, the EU issued a yellow card for Thailand, and that, according to that, the country has fixing the law very quick, and we come up with the Loyal Ordinance Fisheries in November 2015, and this one contains several, two sides. They still keep the participation of small-scale fisheries, keeping the organization, and also they increase, for instance, the small-scale definitions and some kind of small-scale with fishing license. And one good thing is about some kind of more prohibition of fishing gears. This is another point. And Recently, in 2017, they make second amendment for the Royal Ordinance on Fisheries to, let's say, to allow small-scale fisheries to fish offshore if they get permission from the DG. So what happened? What happened, I would say, the intent and unintended consequences according to the enforcement of the Royal Ordinance of Fishery in 2015. One particular point is the underlying principle. It seems clear that the transparency and legitimacy process leading to the new law and how the law is implemented is highly questionable. And what happened? The definition, one in even in the FAO guideline didn't say what exactly the definition, because it depends on the context of country. My country put the definition of small-scale fishing as artisanal fishing. That means fishing in the coastal sea, and if using a boat, there must be less than 10 ton grosses, and engine must be less than 2080 horsepower. In reality, that definition is some kind of homogeneous, but in the real world, we can't treat that as a one group. The operations are diverse and should be categorized at least in 3 main groups. For instance, the first one, it should be the small-scale fishing communities that for subsistence. The second, the group that using outboard fishing vessel employing non-mechanized simple gear. And the third group, we should definite it as a semi-commercial small-scale fishing, that even they use smaller boat than 10-ton courses, but I would prefer to, make it in more detail. Let's say the group that use the boat less than 3-ton courses, the second group between 3 to 5, and the third group between 5 to 10. Then you can clarify a very fitting regulation for each group of the small scale rather than issue the same regulation for one group. That is the one particular problem. The second one is the fishing gears, some kind of fishing gear. The prohibition of some fishing gears cause the consequence to the fishery. For instance, they prohibit to use the acetate shrimp push net, which is the traditional small-scale fishing that they usually fish the acetate shrimp by push net with engine in the area of the less than 1,000 meters from the shore, but they won't allow that. If you want to allow them to fish close to the shore, they don't catch anything because that kind of animal just stay close to the shore. Okay, the second one is about the push net. The Royal Ordinance on Fisheries, they banning the gear like push net. They consider is illegal because this gear were considered damaged due to the belief that they are bottom tending gears, when in practice the gear is highly selective and does not cause damage to the habitat. Okay, so why this is partly the case? The abolishment of push nets has paved the way to another trawl gear, so similar to patrol but bigger and more powerful steel blade that seem to cause more damage to habitat compared to push nets. Okay, this information is largely based on the observation made by the small-scale fishers, which we note during the survey. So they express deep concern about ecosystem health and how this gear may have direct consequences on their catches and thus the fishing livelihood. Okay, so another one is the last gear that I will provide you. It's about anchovy falling nets, the gears that have been used a lot by small-scale fishers, traditional fish in the coastal sea in many areas in Thailand. The law prohibits to use this gear in the coast and define it again as the high-efficient fishing gears that damage the large if fish in the coastal sea, So even with no clear and sound scientific information, that restriction caused the small-scale fishers who were not able to fish outside the boundary of the coastal sea stop fishing. Such impact. You can see on the picture that this is all other anchovy falling net stop fishing. So they switch from that to another squid light laying, which is not their traditional, but they have to do it to make their survival. Okay, and the last point that I'm going to make is about the governance, the governance sectors. It's talking about two things. They raised the point, what about the legitimacy of the provincial fishery committees? Is that make sense to get a number of district chiefs in one province? So you can have as much as you like as far as you get the district that have fishery in size. But the way you work, it's some kind of when you count the voting. So the district chief will take the major voice. Okay, so that one point. The other point is about the power and authorities of the these committees. So when you want to do something just for your province, you can raise the point and you have no decision. You have to take that point, sent to the central government for them to consider to see whether they will say yes or no. So the answer is unclear. It seems like you have the fisheries committees as a second order governance by law, but power and authorities, it's still, for me, for the time being, because it is under study, it seems unclear to me. Okay, so
Professor Suvaluck, we're going to need to wrap up in like 1 minute, if that's possible, please.
Yes, of course. So come back to the fishery again. Since 1947 until now, so it seems that the Royal Ordinance on Fisheries, I think the policy implication from the V2V study, we can help them to clarify small-scale fishery definitions and help them to fixing up the fishing gears prohibitions, and maybe less about the fishery committees, authorities, and mechanism. So I think that is three important points from the V2V to make the small-scale fishery from V1 is vulnerabilities to more viability according to the legislation change. Okay, that's all for now. Thanks very much for your attention.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. And really interesting ideas around unintended consequences. So excellent. I think we're going to move on to the presentation by Yinji. Prateep, I think you're going to share that presentation. That one's going to be recorded or pre-recorded.
Can you hear?
I can see it, but I cannot hear it yet.
I have no idea.
Maybe once you press play. No, can't hear it yet. Maybe if you try, are you playing it off the browser, or is it downloaded on your machine?
Downloaded.
Downloaded.
Setting. Just stop share screen. No?
No, unfortunately not. I hear some noises, but not quite the.
Screw. What should I do?
Yeah. Well, it doesn't look like. Yeah, I see the. Are you sure it's downloaded off onto your? Are you playing it from your desktop?
Yeah. Let me close and play it again. Share the screen. Can you hear now?
No, I'm actually trying to download it myself.
So I don't think, we have, any other option given the limited time. Maybe Derek, you're mute.
I'm going to try it one more time myself.
Okay.
See if it works. So. Can you see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. From Tokai University, Japan. My talk is about.
Can you hear?
Okay,
Yeah.
excellent. So
Works
I'm
very
gonna
well.
play it.
Okay, please. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, here we go.
After a decision has already been made about the TAC, total allowable catch, small-scale fishers fighting against the old thinking in Japan. This after a decision has already been made. This is a quotation of a fisher, and it's also a kind of a popular phrase in these days in Japan. So let's take a look what's happening in Japan. What's happening in Japan? Well, this phrase actually can include two meanings. One is that when people don't know what's happening, so that's what's happening. And another one can be we know what's happening, but we don't know what's really happening. And this later one is kind of situation in Japan. New Fishery Act, the Fisheries Act was enacted in December 2018 for the first time in about 70 years in Japan, and came into force in 2 years later, December 2020. And this new Fisheries Act with the keyword Seijo Sangyoga, the growth industry or growth industrialization. As I was indicated in our book, this TBTI global book, published in 2020, it was about Japanese small-scale fisheries. As it indicated, the stated primary purpose of the policy reform is the Seijo Sangyoga, or growth industrialization. And this resource management is one of the major amendments of this new Fisheries Act. The resource management, especially this resource management system, which is centered on the expansion of total allowable catch and the introduction of the individual quota system. And there has been actually a huge criticism about this new legislation, the process of the legislation. as was pointed out in another chapter of the book that I have mentioned before, a just space for the small-scale Japanese small-scale fisheries in Seijo Sangyoka. It says that of the 755 fisheries cooperative nationwide, only 77 fisheries cooperatives have properly heard about why and how the policy reform. And these are kind of things that's happening in Japan. And here are some fishers' voices about the current situation, which was included in our newly published book, another TBTI Global Book Series, The Life Above Water Japanese translation book. In this book, we not only translated the chapter, but we also included the fishers, the voices from fishers and the scientists and the government officials about their opinion of the current situations. And here's one. And the title of my talk is actually is the quotation of this fisher, the fisher leader in Izu area, the Ito Fisheries Cooperative Association. And he said that we can't have a discussion after a decision has already been made about this total ulubu catch system. And if it assigns it from the north to the south by the same tack, the sense of injustice in the region will come out. Now, so it remains doubtful to treat such large-scale fishing, catching tons after tons in a boat, and the fishing that catches only one by one in the same discretion. And here is another fisher's voice, and he's from the Inatari fishing community, and the fisher leader, the leader of the fisheries cooperative. And he mentioned that the government's intention with the total ulubu catch system is to increase productivity and stabilize the fishery income. But is it really positive for coastal fisheries, small-scale fisheries? I think everything is negative. And when things are run only with figures, what will become of fisheries in Japan? And he also mentioned that, which I think is very important, is that coastal and small-scale fisheries are neighbors to each other, sometimes rivals and collaborators at the same time. We have continued to protect resources and protect the seas from each other's rivals. And it's how we sustain our fishing industry. And this point has been negated by this Professor Sven Jentoft in his renowned book, another TBTI Global Book Series, Life Above Water. Professor Jentoft indicated that the quota system ends up discriminating between the haves and the have-nots, those with and without quota rights, which is problematic in communities where traditionally people were in the same boat. And not only is this bad for collective action, it is also a source of potential conflict in the community. And let's take a look at what the small-scale fishers' vulnerabilities are. And for example, it includes the fisher's voice is not being heard or not being heard well. Even we have this system in Japan, the government advisory body system, where fishers the representatives can join, are joining. And also Fisheries not recognizing where what's happening currently, and they're are not being able to take control of the language and avoid rhetoric that is unfavorable for small-scale fisheries and others. And at this point, actually, we can it was indicated by Professor Entuft in his this article, Blue Economy, the Power Game of Language. And he said that if people in small-scale fisheries wish to make the blue economy work for them, they must take control of the language to avoid a rhetoric that further marginalizes them. And also, the true meaning of the blue economy is not to be found in glossy pamphlets, seductive language, and political statements about the ocean as a new frontier for economic growth, but in how the blue economy works in practice, like for people in small-scale fisheries communities. Well, this is exactly the things that happen. It's the case for Japan, as we can replace these words and it still works well. The true meaning of the resource management is not to be found in glossy pamphlets, seductive language, and political statements about maintaining and recovering fishery resources and improve productivity, but in how the resource management works in practice, like for people in small-scale fisheries communities. Well, this session, the Vulnerability to Viability Approach, understanding the process of building strong small-scale fisheries. It emphasized that while small-scale fisheries will continue to remain vulnerable to multiple challenges, building on their existing strength may be an effective strategy to increase viability. So, from my opinion, adopting the blue justice lens is a way for building on their existing strength. As I have also proposed this point in my chapter in this newly published Blue Justice book, TBTI Mare publication series, Blue Justice, Small-Scale Fisheries in a Sustainable Ocean Economy.
Great. So that was from Inji Lee, and I know Inji obviously has lots of activities going on right now, so she was able to provide us with a pre-recorded presentation that was great. We do have to wrap up on time, so Prateep, maybe if you have like maybe one question that can be asked of the panel, but we do need to wrap up right on the half hour. So.
Okay, so we have a question now from the audience. So this is from Cecil Pradhan. There are really nice presentations. My question to Professor Suvaluck: when we think at the fisheries system, how to visualize international trade policies, greater integration of unrelated sectors like finance sector, industry, fishing, and fiscal policies like financial incentives for capital incentive, for better governance. For Suvaluck.
Thanks, Prateep. So I think the question is a bit too long for me. Can you say it again, please?
So the question is basically about, how do we look at other sectors, because you were speaking about law and the regulatory mechanism.
Right, right.
And then how to integrate multiple sectors into your analysis.
Okay, because this study over this time, my question is about exploring about the main legislation that related to fishery in Thailand, and this is the big main one is this law. In fact, there are other several laws that I didn't include in this talk because it will make it more complicated. For instance, we have to think about the Marine Department law that is about the intrusion that built in the sea. That is one another law. And also this is about the, what is to say, labor law. Labor law that is dealing with the fishers who work with some kind of workers that I didn't talk about it yet. And the other one that will affect a lot is about the tourism law. Tourism law that is promote more tourism, and the boat owner that can do some kind of recreation tourism also influence the small scale fishing livelihood. At least 3 main laws, and another law is about the coastal law that is issued in the same year of fishery laws. That one work with the coastal committee is kind of parallel to the fishery law. So I hope that in the next 6 months, as another type of the, integration of other laws to see whether it is supporting the small scale fishers alignment to the SSF guidelines. So you will see other on top of the fishery law at that time. So give me another chance in the next 6 months. We see that. Thank you.
Thank you. There is a question for Yinji here, but I'm afraid Yinji is not here, but I'll just read the question and pass it on to Derek. So the question is, how strong do you guess is the influence of global blue economy discourses on Japanese fisheries policy? We'll make sure that this question reaches Yinji, and Yinji might be back in touch with you soon. Okay, over to you, Derek.
Okay, yeah. So again, thank you very much to everybody for the really great presentations. It's so much to actually talk about and to share more ideas, and hopefully we'll have a chance to do that very soon. We do have to wrap up exactly at the half hour here. So just, again, lots of interesting cases and experiences, 2 of which were connected to marine protected areas, which is very interesting as well. Everyone really highlighted the multidimensional nature of the drivers of vulnerability and resilience, those enduring ones like poverty and that Gazi talked about, some of the shocks that Haseeb highlighted. Also, everyone really focused on highlighting some entry points, as some of the ones that Indah mentioned as well, and then clearly a central role for governance, and Suvaluck's presentation on rulemaking highlighted that as well. So lots of interesting, and Yinji as well with her presentation. So lots of interesting themes coming together. Thank you again to everybody for presenting. Thank you, Prateep, for your role as the project director of the V2V. We look forward to having further conversations with everybody. Please stay well and take care. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Hope
you.
to see you in physics.
Hope to see you.
Yes.
Yeah,
See you
in
soon.
person.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye, take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.